Hi to everyone that is joining us from around the world. I am James, the head of marketing here at Hunter. I'm just going to let everyone join us over the next 60 seconds. While we wait for that, if you can just let us know in the chat in the bottom right where you are joining us from today. And I will go first. I'm joining us from Ashburn, Virginia in the United States by way of England, as you can tell by the accent.
Hey everyone, I'm Rui. I'm joining in from an unusually cloudy Porto in Portugal.
Hey everyone, I'm Oliver, calling from Cleveland, Ohio. And James, if you didn't say it, I definitely just thought that was a Virginia accent.
It confuses everyone.
I am, of course, Matt, CEO of Hunter. Happy to be here. And Oliver, I appreciate your lighting because this is the most tan I think I've ever looked compared to someone. So I appreciate it. This is great. Usually I have to like hold my own against Rui, which doesn't work because he lives somewhere where they're allowed to have sun. Rui, almost what, year round is it?
Yeah. I know it's mind blowing for you, but yeah.
Foreign concept, 100%. Yeah.
Yeah, don't have much in Cleveland, Ohio this time of year, so might have to dim the lights a little bit, catch up.
Good stuff. Well, everybody's pouring in. Good to see everybody representing. Speaking of, San Diego is representing today. We've got lots of folks from the best area for Comic-Cons that I've ever experienced. Well done. Sweden, nice.
All right, so just a little housekeeping before I disappear and hand over to Matt. So I'll be your moderator for today's session. We have a whole load of great content to get through, but I know that the most valuable part of today is actually going to be towards the end, which is our Q&A. If you have any questions as we go along, you have two options in the bottom right of your browser right now. There's a chat option and there's a questions option. Either one is absolutely okay. Just ask your questions as we go along in those areas. And then Matt, Rui, and Oliver will answer towards the end of today's session. So without further ado, Matt, over to you.
Let's take it away. Well, I guess the cat's out of the bag on our hosts, so I'll start with this. If you're not aware, Hunter does research every year, but we're accelerating that, where we look at all of the emails we send where people have said it's okay to use that data across all of our users. And we compile all of the information about what's working, what's not working into something that hopefully is usable by you, the reader. And we incorporate many of those statistics into our product decisions, marketing, content, and into things like today's webinar. So if you haven't had a chance, I don't think you can probably click that link, but James is usually really good about sharing it. You should definitely download the report and take a look. Pretty pleased to say there's almost always something in there that shocks me a little bit or corrects my thinking about a particular approach to this. So definitely recommend it. Take a look at that link. And as mentioned, here are the three of us who are going to hopefully expand your horizons and your minds with amazing content that's going to help you grow your business. So Oliver, Rui, thanks for joining us today. Glad to have you. Rui, great picture, by the way. I don't know if you've gotten enough compliments about that today. So just kudos.
Maybe first since the last 30 minutes.
It can't be the worst kind of feedback you get, right? All right, here's the agenda. So we'll cover a little bit about the reason why we're here, what's the topic of conversation, why are we doing this? We'll get into, within an organization, what's the right way to navigate getting to the people who are going to ultimately influence or make the decision. It's not always one person, which is, I think, a little bit of a spoiler. We're also going to talk about building personas. And then lastly, kind of a one-page plan. How do you implement? How do you use all of this? And of course, if we miss anything, there's plenty of time for Q&A, assuming we get through all the slides in time. So let's keep moving. Okay, I think over the last handful of years, you're all probably very aware that there has been a focus on scalability and on sort of repeating common playbooks in terms of your outreach. And that scalability has usually manifested in ways that you would see people talking about how to make your list size as big as it can be, how to automate sending your emails to really large lists. And one of the key areas of focus of our research was to try to figure out how do we help you do the best you can within that. And what we've learned, which honestly wasn't a terrible surprise, but at least now we have the data to back it up, is that one size fits all approaches for outreach are just not going to work anymore. Not only does it not seem like it should work, but we actually now can see from a data perspective exactly where those drop-off points occur. And so what we've also heard from as part of our research is we don't just look at outbound data, we also survey decision makers in a variety of industries. And look, what they say is pretty consistent across the board. 2/3 of them will tell you that the outreach they receive feels very pushy, feels very sales oriented, and is kind of, frankly, a little off-putting as an entry into a discussion. A similar number, slightly less, also highlight irrelevance as a reason why things don't really resonate, which makes perfect sense, right? If you're not being focused and targeted with your messaging, if you're not really trying to craft and not only a relevant but a meaningful message to your audience, it's going to fail. And really what this message says is don't do that. And don't think that just jumping right into a sales process is going to get you where you want to be. So what I'm not going to do is tell you that you should just email the CEO and then that's the secret. What it does mean is that you, just to go back here, sorry, is that you should email more than one contact at a company. Look, back in the day, there was something called ABM that was popular as a term for a while. Conceptually, what ABM did was allow you to target multiple people within a company. And it was all about kind of optimizing your approach for a go-to-market outreach that was based on touching multiple folks in an organization. This is absolutely still important to do. And in fact, the data suggests, it continues to be more important than ever. One contact per company, per sequence, though, is really going to be the key recipe that you'll hear us talk about today. It's not about just reaching one person, but going back to that relevance point, it is about making sure that the email that you send to each person in the organization respects what they're doing, their role in the sales decision-making process, their role in their buying process, and ideally that your message is thoughtful about who they are in reference to the services that you provide. When you do that, you're going to get almost double, the number of open reply rate. And so I think this is really important. Sorry, this is reply rate, not open rate. So don't send the same email to multiple people in one company. Can't emphasize this enough. Look, doing what I just said, if you're sending the exact same message to multiple people within the company, here's the risk that creates for you. So ignoring the data for a second, what it's doing is creating proof inside the organization that you're trying to reach out to that your messaging is not personal. That right there should be a reason enough not to do it. But what often happens is you'll see something like this. They will simply take the exact same message and change the first name, call it personalized. That's not going to get you there. They're going to maybe reference using the same general email that you're a part of a certain LinkedIn group, or that they're going to reference your LinkedIn post. But again, when 2 or 3 or 4 different people in the same organization get that message, that's obviously going to be a red flag. I also want to point out that spam filters are looking for this kind of thing too. So it's not just about the recipient filtering out your content. It's also about making sure that spam filters don't see you sending, 5, 6, 7 versions of the same email to different people in the company. You've got to do more than that. Look, ultimately, all of this is about finding ways to generate more leads from email. That's really the purpose of all of our advice. It's to try to help you find all the edges, the nooks and crannies, the opportunities kind of to tweak and improve your messaging or your outreach. This is no different. Your lead, the people you're trying to reach out to, look, we're all in the business of finding opportunities to solve problems for our companies, right? Regardless of what position you're in, that is sort of what we're here for. And a really key way of discovering new services is people reaching out to you. It's not a bad thing. It's just that too often people do it poorly. That's what I'm trying to get everybody who's here not to do, because the people that you're emailing do need the information. They want you to send them an email that's relevant. They want you to highlight a new opportunity where they can potentially bring more value into their organization. This is actually a quote we got from a marketing director. People ought to look more at who they're sending emails to rather than the scaling, because the scaling is what costs relevance. This is a very common refrain, frankly, when we look at the research. So, yes, you need to think about scale, but you need to rethink how you're thinking about scaling outreach to make sure that you're optimizing at all times for relevance. And today we're going to talk a lot about how do you reach different folks, but you don't want to lose this initial principle, because this is really the key difference maker in making sure everything you send is going to be more successful. Now, something you've heard us talk about, I want to actually show you the data directly and visually. Our research shows that the reply rate improves when your list size is smaller. And you can see right here, 50 and below is the sweet spot. And so really 21 to 50 is the right range. So what does this mean? You're like, Matt, I'm trying to scale my business, not shrink my outreach. I agree, but there's obviously ways that you can break segments down, that you can do sub-segmentation, all of which is designed to try to get you to a small targeted list. What 50 means here is not literally 50 people. What it means is 50 is about the number that most people can build into a segment that's small enough to make sure that everybody you're reaching out to makes sense message-wise, right? So if I'm sending an email to somebody who's in product and somebody who's in sales, you can imagine the way that I would communicate with each of them is going to be very different. That's really what this number represents. It represents that at 50, you've built a small enough audience that the message is probably going to be able to be tailored and relevant to every one of them. It's not that you need to do it one-off, but it means that if you can shrink that list size down to people with a specific area of interest, specific role in an organization, specific region in the country, all of the differences that play into that are going to help you make sure your messaging is tailored to be more relevant. The small list size makes that job easier. That's really what the 50 is about. That's really the behind the data. And that's why you see past 50, the number starts to decline pretty rapidly. Once you get to 500 and above, your numbers are not going to look very good. So this is ultimately what this is saying. Yes, I agree. Smaller doesn't scale. It is true that 50 is not a full-size list, but what 50 is a segment that you can speak directly to. And that's really the piece that we're trying to make clear. You want to scale relevance, and the way to scale relevance, not just your list, but your actual relevance, is knowing who's going to influence the success, not always just the decision maker. It makes sense to reach out to other people in the organization, because one of the benefits of that is, let's say 3 or 4 people in the decision-making committee, assuming it's a large company and they have a decision-making committee, those people in that room are all going to have heard of you, are all going to have seen what kind of solutions you offer. So by the time the decision maker or the champion brings this thing into the discussion, it's not going to be like a brand new brand name that they're just now hearing for the first time. So knowing who influences the success is really important. Understanding what they care about. Making sure the messages are built for what they care about and who they are within the decision-making process. And then again, all of this is going to help you to make sure that you can contact multiple people inside a company, all of which is going to help improve your success. Today is about sharing how. My point was just to make sure you understand why we think this is important in the first place and what the data says. And so with that, let's turn it over. Oliver?
Sweet. No, thank you, Matt. I think there's some really important insights there and definitely sets the foundation for what Rui and I are going to dive into. But now we really want to look into how buying decisions are actually made and then how that impacts your outbound email sequences. So most cold emails, they don't fail because the copy is bad or the message isn't right, a lot of the time it's just because you're sending it to the wrong person. So when we're looking at our outbound, our cold email setups, before you even write a single word, we need to understand, one, who we're actually writing to, but then long term, we obviously want to turn our cold emails into sales, what that decision making process looks like on the back end. Now, more often than not, there's 4 buckets of people we'll be reaching out to and who's involved in a buying decision. There's the pain feeler, and this is usually who we're able to find first. And they're also the ones who are going to understand our email immediately. But more often than not, they might not be the one that can actually pull the trigger on solving the issue. So they're good to have in the batch, but they're not always going to be the one that can pull the trigger, like I said. Now, 2 is the budget holder. This person doesn't necessarily care about features of what we're offering. They don't care about how they get from A to Z. They just care about what they get on the outcome, what problem is being solved. So before you write to them, you really need to be able to answer what question, and that's what is the cost of not solving this. And for the budget holders, if that's what we're reaching out to, that's the frame that's going to get responses. So you don't want to write, here's what we do emails. You really want to write, here's what it's costing you by not solving this problem. Then 3, the blocker, another very important person, but a lot of the time you might not know this person exists until you're further into the sales cycle. However, if you go through this process enough times or you have historical data, you can, we'll call it, pre-handle any objections this person might throw out. So if the deal's at risk of stalling, this could be your legal, your IT, a skeptical finance person. The lesson here is don't write as if this person kind of makes the decisions. If you can identify the blockers up front, that's when you've got the best chance to, again, pre-handle it as you're reaching out to everybody in the organization. Because then you can, again, pre-frame the objections, beat them to the point where the blocker could step in, install the deal. Now, the champion, this is my personal favorite. This is someone inside the company who benefits from your solution working. So think of this like an internal sales rep. What is kind of the most important part of the buying cycle is, 1, getting your foot in the door, but 2, somebody to vouch for you. And that's what the champion is going to do. And a good email sequence here, it really should just kind of include outreach designed to create a champion, not necessarily go for the direct sale. Because if we can get the champion on our side, we've got somebody internally vouching for us, we can help them vouch again for the solution and help us find a decision maker, whether it's them or not. So everybody kind of has their own role within the team. Now you've got to write specific messages to each one of these people to make sure your deal keeps moving forward. And so when you can contact 2 to 3 of these people in one company, you're going to improve your reply rates by 46%. Now, again, to what Matt was saying earlier, you don't necessarily want to put all of your eggs in one basket. Just hope that message finds the right person at the right time. If you can write personalized messages to your 4 buckets, so your pain feeler, your budget holder, your blocker, and your champion, it really just increases your chances of getting noticed, getting responded to, getting your foot in the door for that next conversation.
Hey, Oliver, can I jump in? Can you go
Yep.
back to that one slide? I just want to point out, depending on the size of the organization, the smaller the organization, the more likely are that some of these people are the same person. So the idea of the pain feeler and the champion in a small business is often the same person, because the person who feels the pain is empowered to fix it. So they become the champion. In a bigger organization, the people feeling the pain are not empowered to fix it. They're just empowered to deal with it and get paid for it. So the champion is usually somebody higher up. So you can think about this as like a compression effect. The smaller the organization that you're reaching into, the more likely they touch more than one of these personas. But you still want to think about each one of these when you're building your content, because even if it is the same person, maybe you want to make the first one about the pain and the second one about being the champion, right? So you can kind of think about how that would weave into your content.
Yeah, 100%. No, great point. And we do kind of go into that here. So I think we're in a very good spot. So there's two ways we want to look about this, right? So we've got two examples here. We've got a 30-person SaaS or tech startup and a 250-person manufacturing firm. So like Matt said, in a smaller business, like a 30-person tech startup, one CEO, one founder, one COO might wear multiple different hats. So they could be the pain, budget, blocker, and champion all at the same time. But that does not mean we need to hit every single one of those points in a single email. We want to build sequences around each of those roles of this one person. So the founder CEO, they might care about revenue, cost, time, and thriving in their market. There's different ways you can tie your sequences around that, and we'll go into that in just a second. But on the flip side of that, if you jump up to a 250-person manufacturing firm, each individual person is going to have dedicated functions, responsibilities, and then they're going to be able to coordinate those decisions together. So the pain feeler could be a head of a certain department. The budget owner might be the COO. Again, like we mentioned earlier, blocker might be HR, IT, legal. Then the champion might be the person who actually feels that pain every single day. So smaller companies, yes, multiple people are going to wear multiple hats. You can tailor your messaging around that. At a larger firm, you can tailor your messaging to individual people that are going to resonate with what we're offering. And so again, here's how this looks at different size companies receiving the same offer. So we will start off with a smaller company, give you examples there, but when you're targeting a smaller company, you may just have to email one contact, but again, you don't want to put all of these in one message. You want to use different angles until you can draw a reply. So if we're looking at a founder of a 30-person SaaS company, email one might be treating them as a pain feeler. So they care about winning hours back, lost to repeating operational problems. Or in this case, you might ignore what ads, meetings, docs, processes for its own sake. So you write an email to that persona. Yes, it's going to one person, but they might have different characteristics during different seasons even. So email one can be a pain feeler email. Now, email two, going to the same person again. This is where you can treat them like a budget holder. So they care about extending their runway and making every dollar work harder. But in this case, if we can't show how fast or show a measurable payback, they might ignore the message. And then moving on to the third, again, the same person. Now we're taking a third angle. Let's treat them like a champion. So what they care about with this angle, it's compounding games quarter over quarter and winning the category, but they're going to ignore messages that don't move the needle on growth. So it's all going to one person. Each email has its own job, and that's to treat them like a pain feeler, a budget holder, and a champion. Now we're reaching out to a founder. It's unlikely that they're the blocker in this case. So that's why we focus on these three buckets. But if we're focusing on a CTO, they could be a blocker in this case, but they could also feel the other three buckets. So really think about who you're messaging, which of the four buckets applies to them, and then in a sequence, write specific messages to hit on each one of those buckets. And then when we're moving upstream, so a 250-person manufacturing firm, for example, we want to use this same logic, but rather than sending the three buckets to the same person in the same sequence, we split that across different personas. So now we've picked out 2 to 3 different people. So the pain feeler, in this case at a 250-person manufacturing firm, might be the head of a department. So they care about standardizing processes, being followed and driven down on wastage. And they might ignore anything that sounds like more slides, no value. So that's going to one person. Now we switch over to a second person who's going to be in a different bucket, and that's going to be the budget holder bucket. And that could be your COO. So they really care about kind of connecting processes, improving company strategy, and reducing costs. That might not be the case for a head of a certain department. So we want to treat the budget holder, in this case, based on their roles and responsibilities, what sort of decisions they're going to be able to make within the company. Now switching over to the blocker, that could be the head of HR. Everybody loves talking to HR in their day-to-day. So you can kind of treat them like a blocker in the email sequence as well. But there are things they do care about, and that could be learning and development, personal development within the business, improving turnover, improving churn, anything like that, where they can operate in that sense. So now in the previous example at the smaller company, we've got one person, 3 buckets. As you move upstream, now we've got 3 people for 3 buckets, and we want to send personalized message to each of these people. As Matt said, you want to keep your list size under 50. Let's not put all of these 3 people in the same campaign with the same message and just hope something lands. No, put a little bit of extra effort in. That's going to increase your reply rate. It's going to more than double it if you can write a specific message to the specific person based around their ability to make decisions in the buying process. And then again, just to double down on it, smaller sequence of less than 100 recipients. We can even tighten it up to less than 50 recipients. It's going to really increase your reply rates. We see it under 100 recipients generates 158% more replies than sequences with 500 plus. Because if you're going above 500, we can realistically make an educated guess. There's a lot of people receiving the same message over and over again, even if it doesn't apply to them. But we can make it super targeted, super personalized, even at a bit of scale, where we are only going to see positive things happen.
Thanks, Oliver. So before I actually jump in, I want to say something, which is people that usually watch this, they get all excited about doing personalization. So they sit down and they just freeze because they try to build very complex processes to actually define these personas. What I want to give you in the next few minutes is basically a way that takes 10 minutes per segment, not a week. Simple 4 steps, all things that you can do right now and act upon. The first step is just 3 things. You need to write down 3 things. You don't need a 30 size persona template. You just need 3. And that is first, who are these persons? And that means what's their title, what's their seniority, what's the team. So that should be easy. Number 2, what do they care about? So not what you're pitching to them, actually, what is the outcome that they are measured on where you can actually help them? How can you influence their quarterly review, for example? And number 3 is usually the one that most people ignore, which is the reason why this person will likely ignore your email. So, for example, let's take the Oliver's CEO example of in the 250 person manufacturing firm. So she's looking for cost reduction and process compliance. So if you just send an email to this person saying, let's have a quick chat about lean methodology, bang, delete. People don't care. Or if you say something like, I would love to share a 30-minute overview about what we do, again, people don't care. You actually need to talk about show empathy. What is the pain that this person is feeling and how can you help that person? So it's super important that you actually identify the reasons why these people might ignore you and use that in your sequences. So the second step is basically to put the contrast on the table. So what do I mean by that? I'm not saying that you need to be organized. Actually, the goal here is to stop from cheating. So when you write personas on separate pieces of document, it will look like you are personalizing, but in the end, things will end up very similar. So when you put everything together, the bluff will basically come out. So look at these rows, right? Here it becomes super clear what is the difference between talking to a founder, a CEO, or to a sales manager. So the CEO, he cares about pipeline and survival. So when he receives an email at 9 p.m. on a Tuesday, they ask one simple question. How can this make me make more money? If the answer is not visible right in the first 2 lines, your email will be deleted or ignored. In contrast, the sales manager is a different person living a totally different week. They are not concerned about survival. So their concern is about the team is missing the quota, the VP is pressuring, asking why. So the way they read your email is basically, will this help my team without me having to defend a new tool to the IT department? And if the answer is no, then your email is ignored. And again, you're selling the same product or service, the same value, but these two different people see your product and your solution completely different. And you have to convey that. You have to show that empathy to your recipient in order to make it super relevant. Then, how does this translate in actual copy, for example? So for the founder, you would send a message that is super effective in showing how it will impact what he cares about. In this case, you're sending him an actual number and a plausible number. You're saying 300 decision makers. You're not saying unlimited. You're not saying 10x. You're just providing an objective number, which is easy to trust. And then you also show the trade-off. So one of the reasons a CEO might ignore your email is because you're just asking him to put a lot of effort in something he doesn't know. And here it's just saying, this just takes 2 hours a day, and that's it. For the sales manager, again, same product, same value, you write something totally different, which is tailored to their pain. Again, empathy. And you'll say something like, your reps are spending more time building lists than actually sending emails. Here's how you can actually fix that without adding new tools. So you're already speaking directly to the pain of the sales manager, the results and the outcome of their team. And you're already mentioning also a possible objection, which is if your tool is very complex to integrate, you will feel that you will have a lot of work to actually make it happen, and you will ignore your email. So right up front, you're saying, A, this is easy. And why is this empathy important? Like, we have a lot of data, and if you read the cold email report that James shared on the chat, you'll see more data on that. But I just wanted to highlight this very specific case. It's about, if you personalize an email, your reply rates are 56% higher than non-personalized emails. But I want to be precise here about what personalization means or using a custom attribute means. So it's not about, hey, Sarah, I hope you are well. That's not a personalized email. That's just state-of-the-art cold outreach. What I mean personalizing is actually you've defined your persona and you're sending a message that is showing empathy to that persona, that person's specific pain and specific goals and specific objections. So that's what personalization means. It goes beyond just using first name, last name, and company. It goes actually into making sure your sequence talks directly to the audience. And so the third step after you do this, now you have created your personas, you have identified how to speak differently to them. But then the next question is, you have 500 targets. Of course, you want to send the emails to all of them immediately, but actually you need to prioritize, and you want to do that in order to, again, stay relevant. So the way I like to do this is basically to look at this prioritization matrix. So on one axis is the ability to buy. So does the recipient has or not the budget and the authority to buy your solution? And the other hand is, does the recipient has the pain or feels the pain about that your solution might be able to alleviate? So the easy pick here is that is the top right. So if an individual has the willingness, so he feels the pain, and has the ability, so he has the budget, those are the top priorities for you to reach out to. Engage them now, not in a week, not in a month. Those are the ones you want to target immediately. On the top left, you have the persons that have a budget, but they don't see the pain yet. It doesn't mean it's a no. It's basically a not yet. If they don't have the pain, just don't engage them with them immediately, but keep them aware about what's happening. On the bottom right is the persons that have the pain, so they have the willingness to buy your solution, but they have low ability. So either they don't have the budget or they don't have the authority to do that. So those are the type of persons that you shouldn't not drop. You should nurture them. You should push them educational content, ideas, promote your product, but without being too pushy to actually or too salesy, you should help them becoming your champion. So you should nurture these people so that they can promote your solution within the organization and help you, again, fighting the blockers, getting to the decision makers, and all of that. On the bottom left, no pain, no budget. Like this is, there is a temptation that you keep these people on the list, but in the end, you should not reach out to these people because they will not engage with you. So once you do this, how do you actually find the high ability ones? You first of all, you don't want to target just the people that use your tool. For example, the marketing analyst is not the budget holder. The product manager is also not the budget holder. So ideally, inside Hunter's Discover feature, my recommendation is that when you're trying to look for the right contacts and the contacts that have the ability to buy your solution, I would go with a decision maker filter so that you can jump straight into whoever owns the outcome. Number two, if you're targeting a larger company, you shouldn't avoid going just to the decision makers. You should also try in parallel a bottom-up approach. So email the doers, email the people that actually have the pain, but that don't have the authority. And so when a senior individual contributor brings to their manager a solution, the way the manager, so the decision maker, actually looks at that solution is completely different. So if you promote it to the ones that have the pain but might not have the budget, that might help you actually promote. So you should take bottom up, influence the champions, and top down also reach out to decision makers so that this combination makes a very positive impact on your recipients. So next step is, how do you do the willingness, right? How do you identify the willingness of the people? The question is, what you're trying to convey here is, what are the people that need it right now? Usually, there are a few signals that you should use. The strongest one, in my opinion, is the hiring signal. So if a company is posting a role that your product actually solves or helps, this is a clear sign that they have a problem in that area, or they are trying to optimize something in that area. So that's a sign you should engage with them right now. There is an opportunity there. Another signal I usually use is the funding one. Usually when a company receives funding, it means they have a budget, so they have the ability to buy, but they also have a deadline to execute that budget, and they have to show results. So again, that's an opportunity for you to engage. Other signals or filters you can use to identify the target personas is focusing on the tech stack, so trying to see if people are using your competitors, or again, if you can do this on your own, for the specific decision makers you're on target, you should look at social media, try to identify people, if those people are talking about the pain you solve, and use that as a leverage in your sequence to get engagement. So the next step is to basically go into Hunter and find them there. 6 steps. You go to Discover, you define your target company, and now you can use our new AI assistant in Discover, which basically can define your targets in plain language. The AI assistant will basically give you the results. They will suggest refinements so that you will get more tailored companies for the value proposition that you're trying to pitch. Number 2, after you identify the companies that you want to target, you basically go and jump into finding people within those companies. And then my recommendation is that you use mainly job titles, but also you focus on contacts for which you have an email that is verified or is at least an accept all. So you should avoid unverified contacts. Number 3, as Matt already mentioned, you should have one lead list per role. So you should not mix product managers with CTOs or head of marketing. So you should make sure that each list is, again, tailored specific for the persona that you're trying to reach. And then 3 or 4 emails per list. Make those emails super relevant, as Oliver already mentioned. If you believe that those recipients are persons that may have multiple hats, make sure that your sequence talks about the different champion, the blocker, and the decision maker within that. And to remember, just to recall the number that Oliver shared before, like sequences under 100 recipients get 158% more replies than those sequences that have more than 500 recipients. So if you do this process right, and believe me, this is not as complex as it seems, you will get much better results in your sequences. So this is the whole framework. 3 things per persona you need to do. A table to make sure that you see the contracts and you see the differences between your different personas, and then prioritize basically the people that have the ability to buy and the pain right now that you can help them solve. And you can do that, all of that within Hunter. Matt, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Rui. Well, what's next? How do we put this into practice? That's the real question. We always want to try to make this as consumable as possible. So hopefully we've accomplished that today. And anything you felt was reiterated was due to importance. So here is a 1-page plan that you can use to kind of guide your thinking about this process. I think 60 seconds is probably fair. I think I probably look at this a little bit longer than that, James, but 60 seconds is about right. This is kind of how you can think about a single target segment. The first thing is your company type and the person in that organization that feels pain. What do they care about? What's their job title? What do you think somebody feeling that pain is going to respond to in the fewest number of words, right? So the person who feels the pain, that's a great place to start. Hey, by the way, if you've ever received an email like that, nothing gets straight to your eyeballs into your brain faster than someone emailing you about the very specific pain you feel every day, or that you feel once a week, or that you're in the middle of feeling. So I can definitely highlight how valuable that piece is. There's the decision maker. Again, same concept. Title, what do they care about? What's like the fewest number of words where you could potentially speak to their role in this process, or their role related to that pain point. The blocker, that is really kind of, as we talked about earlier, you're almost kind of trying to circumvent somebody closing the door on you later. And so what you're really trying to do is provide evidence, provide value, that when somebody else later in the organization brings up your company's name and solution, this person has already gotten some data points presented to them that kind of helps take away their potential rejection or their potential blocker. And then once you have all of this together, start with what's the first step. So who do I email first? What's the right way to send that message? How do I make sure that it's tailored to one of these specific key points? It is 60 seconds, but sometimes just clarifying who these people are, writing them down, and trying to summarize in as few words as possible the 1-line message that's going to get their attention. Just going through that exercise can be really, really illuminating about how to write the rest of the content for this email, for this audience. And once you've kind of nailed it down for one person in that org, or one person who represents that persona, building a list of 50 or 100 and breaking that down into small chunks should be fairly easy after that. So this is a great way to start to think about the buying persona in your content, how to structure that. We also, in a sort of macro sense, is also thinking about, like, how do you think about reaching out to them multiple times throughout the year? Look, the reality is, and I've said this before, so if you've heard it, I apologize, but it's really important to remember, and that is that you will almost never intentionally get timing right. You can't figure it. There's not enough signal in the universe to let you know proactively or preemptively when to reach out to somebody based on their pain. You can get close, you can get directionally good, but you're never going to nail it. When you nail it, it's luck. Let me be clear. And so what you want to be thinking about is, the first time I do this, it may not work. How many at-bats can I take? How many times can I reach out to this person in the course of the next 12 months to try to make sure I'm going to hit that timing when it does occur? And so what we're putting together, this is coming soon. It's what we'll call an outreach planner. We're trying to be very literal. But what it's supposed to do is give you sort of a 12-month guide or a 12-month look at how should you think about ongoing research. The goal is to give you 2 to 3 campaign ideas that you can run every month, mapped out to B2B buying cycles. Keep in mind, these are going to be sort of generic buying cycles, but you should tune that to your own industry. It should be a good guide to kind of give you a starting point. It's going to have tips, best practices, a lot of the research we're going to kind of package in ways that can be very well used here. And then also, sorry, I skipped this, but 4 campaign types that we can run throughout the year. Look, this is actually something that every industry should probably think about. You probably know some of the ebb and flow of your customer organizations or your target prospect organizations. You know, kind of peaks and valleys. You know, if it's a heavily publicly traded, you know, ecosystem, then you're probably talking about quarters. You're talking about, you know, quarterly reports. They're trying to figure out how to get more revenue in by a certain timeline. So you can start to kind of use the outreach planner that we provide soon to kind of apply to your own industry and figure out, how do you try to not necessarily nail timing? You're not trying to guess at when they have the pain. You're trying to figure out, how do you make sure that you put the right message in front of the right people so that when the timing is right, it's there. They remember you. They will go back into that email. They will use their AI tool and say, hey, look through my email and find that message that that person sent me. Or it's fresh. The next time you send the email, you get right to them. And so, like, this is not a one and done thing. You should never look at it as one and done. If you're on this call and even in the past you've tried this and it didn't work very well for you, don't think that that is indicative of future success. There are ways to make this work for you. And I think a lot of the stuff we've talked about today is going to help. There's more to it. Outreach planners coming. Look at the research if you haven't already. There's a bunch of good insights in there that are going to help make all of this more effective for you. I also want to point out, there's a question from Ryan Rogers in the chat. Thank you, Ryan. I did overemphasize sending to 50 people. I didn't mean that that should be the sum total of your outreach process. I simply meant that, like, getting the individual list size within your overall list audience down to 50 is going to help make the targeting more on point. But you should absolutely be trying to build the biggest, largest audience that you possibly can. That's really important. You should scale up your messaging. But by starting with smaller chunks, you're going to get the messaging more crisp before you reach out to the whole audience. You're going to nail down these personas. You're going to segment them into ways that it's going to make the messaging more relevant. And so before you scale, before you focus on scale, using some of the techniques we've talked about today is just going to help make sure the maximum effectiveness is reached and that you get a better yield out of your outreach. To a certain extent, it is a numbers game. So what we're trying to help you do is optimize for the best results from that numbers game. And a list size of 50, if it's a list of, let's say, 500,000, yes, absolutely reach all 500,000, but don't do it all at once. Break them down into smaller chunks like we've talked about today.
And to add on top of that, not only to smaller chunks, actually break them down to different personas. So
right.
Actually the number 50 is a proxy of relevancy. So the larger the list, the harder it becomes for you to become relevant for everyone on that list. So once you start segmenting this list, you will be able to identify these smaller subsets where you can write something that is very crisp, very specific, very empathetic to that person. And as a result, instead of having one campaign for 500 people, you have 10 campaigns, each for 50 people, which are much more relevant and will yield much better results in the end.
100%. Now, I've been trying to keep up with questions as we go. So has James. But this is the Q&A. So, like, the floor is yours. Please ask any questions either in chat or in the questions section. If there's anything that we talked about today that you'd like more information on, or just anything in general that you think can help your outreach, please don't hesitate to ask. We're all happy to dive in and share our expertise or knowledge or help troubleshoot it with you. Doesn't have to be hunter specific, by the way. See, George is typing. We've got typing happening. So questions are coming. James, you mentioned, oh, sorry, James, real quick, you mentioned next month
Yes.
on the planner.
Yes, so everyone can expect a release next month of the planner. There'll be an accompanying webinar that we run to sort of release it, and it's going to help put a lot of what's been spoken about today and in previous webinars over the last 4 or 5 months really into practice and give you guidance on what to be doing every month. It's I'm very excited, and so is the team, to be able to share that with everyone on the call today.
Thanks, James. Let's see. Okay, we have Kristen, who asked, would love to hear your ideas on existing clients. So not cold outreach, but gaining more repeat business. It seems like it would be a different outreach. Yes, absolutely it would be. I would say the majority of your cold messaging is done when it's a new opportunity. And so a lot of what we talk about is based on that, but the principles are transferable. Because oftentimes, especially in really large organizations, another department may have zero insight into what you're doing within the company already. The good news is if you're doing existing client outreach, you're trying to do like a land and expand strategy. The great news is you already have sort of a key data point within the organization, right? You can leverage social proof that's maybe more valuable to them, or honestly, when I've done it, one of my favorite is, especially in big organizations, I'm already an approved vendor. So, hey, I'm on your approved vendor list. I'm working with such and such department, but I thought that this might be relevant to you, is a heck of a warm intro, right? And so I think there's a number of ways that you can go in that direction, Kristen, that will help you reach out to existing clients. The thing that you probably don't want to do is make it seem like it's completely cold, right? That can sometimes also backfire if, as they start to go through their process, they start to submit forms to procurement, and they get told that this person's already a vendor. Makes you look bad, makes them look bad. And so, you definitely, it doesn't always make them look bad, but it definitely will make you look bad. So avoid it. But I think that's it's a really good way to do it, and it gives you a much warmer intro. Oliver, did you have anything to add? I noticed you were nodding along there.
Yeah, no, I think, of course, it depends on the context of the situation, but I do think you can take a very similar mindset into that situation as you would with cold outbound. So think about who your champion is. Think about who your initial kind of pain level is, who the budget holder is, who the blocker might be. So while it's not cold outbound, the messaging is going to be a little bit different. I still think you take the same principles we discussed today, take it into that situation as you try to expand that relationship.
Thanks, Kristen. Yeah, Matt's brought up a very interesting point. You can't go too deep when it comes to creating profiles on your various personas. And one of those that you can do is called a DISC profile. There's also things like Myers-Briggs. Some of these are more or less specific to the specific individual. So you have to account for that. You have to kind of generalize a bit, as Matt's pointed out that he did. But there are a bunch of these profiling tools out there, and they can absolutely help make sure that you understand their sensitivities, pain points, ways to appeal to them in an organization. I will never sneer at anything that you can do that's going to help give you a more unique or detailed look at your persona in an organization. Anything that you can do like that is going to help. The better you know the person, the better you know the role, the better you know the type of person, essentially the better data you have around your personas themselves, the better you can do at something like this. But highly recommended. I don't think I've actually used DISC for this specifically, Matt's, but I've used DISC for a bunch of other things, and I think it would work really well with that. I think we have a couple more, James. Is that right? Oh, a product question. Here we go, Rui.
I just want to, if I'm trying to use Discover now. I'm not sure I follow the question. Maybe it's referring to the ability to add specific attributes to Discover. So yeah, not in Discover, but in Hunter, if you save companies, then you can create your own attributes that will allow you to even be more detailed. So if there is something specific in your industry that you really want to have as an attribute, then you can definitely use that to basically research within your companies for targets and for segmentation as well.
George, if you're still on, if you don't mind, maybe adding a little bit of clarification on that question, I want to make sure we give you the exact answer to the question you're looking for. While George is doing that, James, do we have another question? Ooh, this is a good one. How many emails to send before judging your copy? Broad sequence. Don't exactly know who we should be targeting yet. So you're kind of doing some experimentation early to try to get a sense for that. Yeah, how soon is too soon? I generally don't. So a couple variables. This is a broad sequence. From the way you've written this, it makes it sound like you might be addressing multiple personas potentially within the same audience. I'm going to make that assumption. So if that's not correct, please clarify. Generally, you want to get to 500, roughly, people who have similar personas. That's going to be the best number to kind of, they're kind of the smallest number is the best way to put it. That's going to likely be the smallest number that starts to give you some statistical significance around the response to the messaging. It also depends on how much you vary the messaging. But if you use reasonably similar messaging across 500 or so people, that gives you a pretty decent sense for what should be working and what's not. If it's not at all, and if you're talking about 350 to 500 emails, but one reply, there's, I'd want to look at things like open rates and things, but you probably are missing the mark somewhere in there, and there's more to do. Oliver, what are some techniques that you've used when you've sent, say under 500, but enough that it's above 250, and you're starting to get a sense that maybe there's something that's a disconnect between the messaging and the audience here?
Yeah, I think it's a really good question. And again, to further your point, I think it kind of comes down to how many people we're outreaching to begin with to give a specific number on it. But let's say I know you said 500, we typically look at it around 250 emails. Not necessarily to see if it's working or if it's not working, but if we have 3 variants going out at once, if variant A is at 250 sends, variant B is at 250 sends, variant C is at 250 sends, usually you can start to see some differences in reply rates, but also positive reply rates between the different variants. So it's hard to say without the full breadth of the situation, but I would say around 250, if you're not starting to get some opportunities, then you might have to tweak the subject, tweak the copy, tweak the call to action. That's why it's good to send a couple variants of the same message to a similar persona with those adjustments made, so you can kind of evaluate the whole campaign rather than, it's not necessarily a, does this work, does this not work? It's a, which of these variables is working the best.
Yeah, great point. James, George had a follow-up, and I wanted to touch on that, so I want to make sure you can put the question up there. George's clarification on his earlier question was, today he was targeting doing some client outreach, found that some specific client details that he was looking for weren't available in Hunter, did some more digging and some sleuthing, some internet sleuthing, was able to find some of the information. And so let's see. And I was thinking about how to add discovery, which I did on my own. Yeah. Okay. So you can always add information that you find on your own to leads manually. In a way, leads, I'm going to be careful here. You can almost think about leads like a lightweight contact database or CRM. I want to be careful with the CRM term. It doesn't have sales automation or workflow processes in there. But if you're just trying to capture people who you found and you want to add them into your cold outreach, you can do that very easily using just manually adding them to leads. We also have a browser extension. And sometimes, George, if you go to the company's website, the browser extension is going to find something that maybe you didn't see using Discover. There's a variety of ways to do this, but the extension is really powerful. I would encourage you to install it and try it. If you've put in the domain, which is what Discover or what the extension uses, and the domain does not present the results, typically what that means is that there's not a lot of publicly available information for that individual or for that company. Or it means that we've not actually had that domain requested before. And so we haven't actually scraped recently on that domain. It's usually one of those two reasons. Every once in a while, there's another edge case. The good news is once you actually search for that domain, it actually sends a request into our system to go back and re-index that firm and see what new information we can find. So that's one thing that will happen is just by searching something and not getting results, it's automatically going to tell our system that there's something there to look at, which is good. You should get notified if we find something. I think it comes, usually within a small number of days where it will tell you that we found some profiles. Alternatively, you can use our email finder. So if, let's say, you do find somebody out there on the web and you want to come in, instead of using domain search, you can just go directly to our Finder tab in our UI, put the person's name and domain in there, do an email finder search, and it will still find the email, even if they did not publicly show up in some of the results on domain search. It's too long of an explanation to get into here. I'm happy to take that offline, George. But even if something doesn't show up in Discover, you can generally still find a valid email for that person by using Email Finder. So I would try those two things. And if you're struggling, reach out directly. We're fairly easy to find. I have it on good authority. There's a great product for finding our email addresses. You can reach out to me or Rui directly, and we're happy to look into that more specifically. Some industries are just tricky too. So give us a heads up. Thanks for the question and the follow-up. Hannah, thank you. I was just about to get to this one. You've noticed a discrepancy between Hunter's verification status and actual delivery results, seeing marked as 100% valid and the result in a hard bounce. Interesting. And what steps can we take to improve? Yeah. So we do a couple points. When you do an email finder search, or if you pull in somebody from Discover, these are generally done at different times. So email finder is like a real-time search and a real-time verification. So if you're doing a verification in any way in our system directly before you do a send, that is going to give you the most up-to-date status. And it is true that these days, the speed at which email addresses are becoming invalid is accelerating. It used to be if you did a verification on your data set once a year, you were probably okay. A couple of years ago, it was down to like once a quarter. Now we're seeing that number is like sub 60 days. And so we have increased the refresh rate on the verification data in our system, but it's also just possible you found somebody in that window. If it's not happening, if it's happening more than maybe once per campaign, I'd want to flag that so we could take a look at that. That's pretty uncommon and pretty rare statistically, but it depends on when you put the data in and when you verified it and the amount of time between that event and the actual sending of the email. Rui, did you have something you wanted to add?
Yeah, on top of that, it might also be the case that your domain is gray listed or something like that. So some email servers will lock that domain. For that, you can use the email health center within Hunter, which will basically flag if you're being gray listed, which will generate those hard bounces, for example.
That's important to know, because when we send the request for verification, we get a hard confirmation back from the email server. So if it's been, let's say, if you did the verification right before you sent the campaign and you still had that problem, it's very likely what Rui is talking about. Definitely check the email account center in the UI, because that should add some clarity, as he said. Thanks, guys. And then Chris is just pitching our A/B testing. Thanks, Chris. Appreciate that. Let's see. What percentage of emails typically? Ooh, do we have like statistics for this, James?
Yes, we do in the report. It is around 3 or 4%.
Got it. Thank you. And in terms of replacements for bad contacts, we need to know more specifically what you're looking for. If this is a follow-on to your question, Hannah, I'd want to look at the details, but yeah, generally, if email proved not to be valid and not to be correct after you do a search, we'd want to know, and happy to refund that credit. Oh, look at that. And with that, we're at time. Thank you everybody for staying on. Thanks for the questions. If we missed anything, we'll definitely follow up. Yeah, Rui, Oliver, thank you so much. It was great to have you guys on, and
Thank you, everyone.
fun topic.
Yeah, thank you.
Cheers, everybody.
Bye-bye.